Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. It's 3 o'clock, and we will start. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you, Michael.
Right. Let's see. The agenda for this webinar on the big climate database version 1.2 is a bit of introduction and background from me, 5 to 10 minutes, and then a presentation of methodology and results from Jannik Schmidt from 2.0 LTA Consultants and Professor Aalborg University. And after that, we will have a Q&A. Can you see my slides as well?
Yes, we do.
All right. Yes, I will give you a short introduction to the project. My name is Michael Meta. I'm head of the food program in CONCITO. We are an independent green think tank and initiators of this project with the big climate database. And I will go through some of the background of the project, purpose and scope, the adoption in the food sector, engaging the general public, and some thoughts on future directions for everything. The background and purpose and scope. The project was initiated in 2019 after dialogue with Danish retailers on the need for data on the climate footprint of food. Back then, it was a discussion of introducing a climate labeling schemes in retail, and the lack of data for such a project. And we engaged in this project funded by the Selling Foundations and launched the first version of the climate database in February 2021 in cooperation with 2.0 LTA Consultants. The purpose of it all, besides informing a possible climate labeling scheme, was to create comprehensive data on food-related greenhouse gas emissions to empower consumers, producers, and retailers to make more climate-friendly food choices. And the project was awarded with the Nordic Council Environment Prize in the same year, 2021, for exactly that purpose. The scope currently is in version 1.2 is 540 products in total, and covering Denmark, Great Britain, the Netherlands, France, and Spain, and covering the life cycle of the products from farm to the retail shelves. So it's not including preparation at home, but it's to the retail shelf. The adoption in the food sector so far has been really great in Denmark. When we look at food service, wholesalers have provided climate footprint data for professional kitchens in both the private and public sector. Private catering companies use the data for climate accounting and design of low emission menus and dishes. In retail, the data has been used for testing climate labeling models in a couple of shops. The picture in the top here shows a test in Danish retail chain Netto of a rated climate labeling model from A to E or F, I think it is. And the data also in retail has been used for green scores on receipts in on websites and so on, and it has been used for informing a climate footprint tracker in a supermarket app as well. In public kitchens, the data is used for sustainable procurement and meal planning, and the picture below here is a public kitchen in the region of South Denmark, where the guy here in the kitchen shows the difference or the equivalent of the carbon footprint of 1 kilo of beef, minced beef, compared to roughly calculated 10 kilos of pork or chicken, or 100 kilos of vegetables. So that's a very visible illustration of the data in the climate database. And lastly, in the food service or food industry, the data has been used for background data for calculation of own products in some companies. The database has also been used for engaging the general public on climate-friendly food habits. On general climate awareness, there has been many mentionings in the media, in the written press, and also in radio and TV programs. So far, we have calculated or counted more than 600 articles and programs on sustainable food choices that have used the data from the climate database somehow. It is also used for educational purposes in schools to teach climate-friendly food habits, and we have also produced educational material for instance, the Danish hotel and restaurant school with a focus on pulses and the climate impact of that kind of products. Looking at the user statistics so far, the Danish version of the climate database have had more than 250,000 users, and the download version has been downloaded more than 7,000 times. So it's for Denmark as a small nation, it's quite impressive numbers. And here's some more examples of use of the climate database and its results in many different purposes in the food service sector, in the media, in educational material, and so on. Some thoughts on the future directions for the project. There's still some issues on the adoption and use related to the methodology and also the European environmental footprint system and standards. There's a revision of the product environmental footprints going on, and we expect it to move closer to the method we apply in the big climate database, consequential LCA, which Jannik Schmidt will explain you more about later. So there's some issues there that needs to land somehow, but we expect that to work out somehow. Future perspectives, we have the international version now with results for all 5 countries so far, and also all the background tables and data that you can dive into there. And then we have the Danish, den store klimadatabase.dk, that has not been updated in the web version yet. There's only a download version with the latest results, but we will update the web version soon. The approach in the climate database is also considered for the state-controlled Danish climate labeling scheme at the moment, and that will be interesting to see how that turns out. And we are also expecting to be able to present more environmental impacts in the database and in the near future, and we expect the land use to be the first added element there. We would also love to include more products and also more countries, but that will require additional funding, and yeah, we will see how that turns out as well, and if there's any interest out there to maybe crowdfund further development of the project. That was it from me for introduction, and I will give the word to Jannik Smits.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction, Michael. First, I want to be sure if you can see my slides.
Yes, but can you change it to presenting mode?
There you go.
Great, thanks.
All right. First, a small agenda. I will give you, well, my agenda, it looks very much like Michael's agenda, but I would say my presentation, it has a more technical touch. So now we will have a chance for going a bit deeper into the engine room of what is behind the big climate database. So first I will say a few things about the goal and scope. After that, methods and data. As a third bullet, I will briefly touch upon results, and finally also on some future directions. So first of all, the purpose or the objectives of the big climate database, it all started because there was a need for climate data related to different food products. And that means data for LCA and greenhouse gas accounting for catering, restaurants, food manufacturers. And also there's a huge demand for data for a climate label of food. Well, if we are looking across the landscape of which LCA and greenhouse gas footprint data are available, then it's all the opposite of what is listed on these 6 bullets you see here. So we really see that there's a need for open data because there's not a lot of open data. We see that there's a huge need for transparent data. I'll come back to that, and I will walk you through how you can see how every individual flow is linked in the big climate database. There's also a need for consistent data and non-biased scientific data, also data with a global coverage. Many data sets, they are very local, only one country maybe. And there's also a need for a more collaborative platform. So I'll come back to how we have addressed all these issues as part of the big climate database. Well, first of all, results we are presenting in the big climate database, they all represent a change in demand for a certain product. It's illustrated as you see here in the top. We have a delta. The triangle is a delta. It means a change in demand, which leads to a change in production, which again leads to changes in emissions. So what do I mean when I say a change in demand? Imagine yourself, you are in the supermarket and you are standing in front of a box full of apples. Then you make a decision to buy this apple compared to not buy the apple. Then imagine further that there was a small label on this apple. Then maybe it told you 100 grams or 50 grams of CO2 equivalent. Then I think what most consumers, they would imagine is that if they buy this apple, they would add this additional 50 grams of CO2 equivalent to the atmosphere. While if they were leaving the apple in the box, they would not cause this additional impact. So that's how you should understand the results. They are all referring to a situation where you decide to buy something compared to not buying it. It also means that you can stand in front of a box of apples and you can look over your right shoulder and see if you should buy a piece of beef instead. So you can really see the comparisons there. If you say you need 3 apples, give the same fullness factor as 1 beef, then you can actually in a one-to-one relationship compare the apples to the beef, because they are all additional in the way we are presenting results. In practice, it means that all byproducts, they are modeled using substitution. We can always come back to that if you have some further questions. It also means that we are composing what we call marginal markets, specifically for electricity. So if there's a need for some electricity in production processes, we are identifying, again, if there's a change in demand for electricity, which electricity producers are then most likely to produce more. Here in Denmark, as an example, there is still some coal-powered power plants. But if I'm buying more or less electricity, these coal-powered power plants, they will be running anyway, because it has been decided that they need to be phased out. So they are actually just utilizing the capacity until they reach the end of their life. It's not so that if I'm buying more electricity in Denmark, there will be more coal power plants. No, there will be more wind power mills, more solar, and then we also need some regulative power in the grid. Furthermore, about this delta demand and delta production is that we are also including what we call indirect land use changes. Again, that's something we can come back to if any of you should have some questions on that. Then we have put the whole climate database together following some principles. And these principles, they are very much following a principle of flexibility. First of all, everything is coded in Python, so we are not stuck in hard-coded Excel sheets, etc. The model is modular, so we can easily add another slaughter module or another plant-based module or a palm oil module or a soybean module. So we can easily add different modules to the model. We can also very easily modify any calculations in the model. And it's also very easy to add new countries and add new products. And also updates are very easy to run. Just as one example here, if we take the example of countries and products, then you see here in the bottom of my slide that we released the first version in 2021, where we had 500 products and only for Danish products in the Danish market. Then some years after, we released another version, which also included results for food products in Great Britain. And we added a few more products. And then again, a little bit later here in 2024, we made a new release where we added 3 more countries to the model. And again, additional products. So it is flexible in the way that it is all set up. Well, when we're talking about food, we of course need to model the way that food is produced. So the output of the model or the database that is footprints of food at retail. So that's the different food products that comes out of the model here in the right side. So we are modeling what is going on in the retail sector. They are having furniture, some cooling of products. They need electricity for light, etc., etc. Then we have a food industry, which is producing all the different food types. The food industry, they have input, as you see, animals. They are buying live animals on the market to process the animals into meat products such as sausages, etc. There's also inputs of crops. Crops are being processed into pasta, bread, beer, etc. And there's of course also inputs of packaging. to keep everything nice when it's sold at retail. Then moving one step back, we have a market of animals, meaning that if we are buying beef in Denmark, there is a market of beef. So we are getting our animals from different countries. So we have you could say, market mix here that tells us which countries are we affecting when we are buying beef. Then we have the specific animal producers. So it could be that we have Brazilian cattle producers, US cattle producers, Argentinian cattle producers. So all these are in the model. So they are all feeding into the markets of animals. Again, the animal producers here, they are buying crops and also feed items. And again, these feed items, they are also purchased on a market. So if there's a Danish chicken breeder who is buying some animal feed, it could be some grains. These grains are then purchased on the market for grains, and we can actually identify where do Danish grains come from, and we can link to the correct countries which are producing the grains in the crop module. The crop module has input of fertilizers, and we have production of fertilizers as well. We also see that the animals here, they are excreting manure, and this manure is applied on land as a nutrient substitute. So the more manure we are applying on land, the less fertilizer inputs are needed. So that's a substitution you see down here. And finally, you see that all the crops which occupy land, they need input of some land. Just like a crop, you need a tractor to produce your crop, then you also need land. So typically in LCA, when we need a tractor, then we do a small LCA of a tractor, and then we include a small fraction of a tractor every time we are cultivating 1 hectare of land. In a very similar way, when we are needing land, we are doing I would not say small, but maybe a big LCA of how do we produce land, just as how we are producing a tractor. But here we are modeling how we are producing land. That is done in a model that tells you how this is produced. And then again, that everything I have explained until now is what we call a foreground system. So all you see here is what is modeled in detail in the big climate database. Then everything that is not included in the front system you see here, that is drawn upon a background database, which is an Exiobase. It's the Exiobase database, where we are getting data on the production of electricity, production of fuels, chemicals, water, machinery, transport, buildings, services, etc., etc. So that's the product system. Now, how much is then included? And what I want to show now is what is included here in this foreground system at first. So first of all, we have these up to 505 food products at retail in 5 different countries. That gives us 2,400 something data sets. But behind these products is that we have some crop cultivation data sets. We have some cultivation and some markets. So you see that there are many data sets. We also have animal production data sets. So here we have it could be beef cattle production in 48 countries. And then we have pig production in 48 countries, and we have chicken production, etc., etc. And then we have markets for each of the products. So that gives us 1,900 data sets here. Then we have some food manufacturing data sets. We also have the iLook module, where there are some data sets. We have fertilizer and land application of manure data sets. We also have packaging constellations. We have retail types at ambient cooling and freezing, also in different countries. And then we have the entire background database, Exiobase here, which comes with 16,000 data sets. So In the foreground system here, we have developed 7,000 data sets. And all these data sets, you can imagine a data set is the same as a small box where there are inputs and outputs. And all these 7,000 data sets, they are linked. So you can have fertilizer that goes to a crop, that goes to a pig, that goes to a slaughterhouse, that goes to processing, and finally you have a sausage. That's the kind of linking that you will see in the system. Then this here is just a picture of, it's the same picture as you saw before. This is just to say that if we are looking at what is here in the before the food industry and the packaging industry, what we have here is that we have a geographical scope of 43 countries and 5 rest of world regions. And we have a temporal scope of all crops and animals. They are modeled for 2016. Then we have our iLook model. It goes with a time series from 11 to 16. Then we have the production of fertilizers, which is representing current and recent technologies. And then we have the background Exio-based database, which is referring to 2011. Again, we have the other processes here in the very front, where we have created, it's not a global data set you see here in the front. We only have food manufacturing processes, retail and packaging for the 5 target countries. And the temporal scope here is here all data, they are recent and representative. Then finally, Michael, he explained before that the original database, it covered the 500 most commonly consumed food products in Denmark. And recently, when we expanded the scope of the database, it was clear that the common products in Denmark, they did not completely cover what is relevant in Spain and France and Netherlands. So we had to add a lot of sometimes more weird products, the ones you see here, Hagelslag from Netherlands, and some more nice desserts here from France, and some very nice Iberico ham in Spain. But we have added a lot of new food items for each of these 3 new countries. Okay, that was what I wanted to say on the goal and scope. Now I will go a bit more into detail with the methods and data. So we are getting a bit deeper in the machine room now. Well, one thing we are utilizing is what we are calling parameterized LCI modules. And to explain you what that means is that I will give you an example of cultivation of crops. So if you are doing as most people do, and you would like to do a data set for production of a crop, and you wanted a carbon footprint of this crop, then you would just collect data for one product at the time and put everything together manually, etc. But what we do here is that we do everything in one go. So we are making use of principles of big data. So how does that work? First of all, we are simply making a bulk download of the UN agricultural database, statistics of agricultural products. They have, in this case here, 185 crops in 245 countries. We get data on harvested area per crop, the yields, and how much organic soils or peat soils are cultivated. From the International Fertilizer Association, we are collecting data on how much fertilizer is used in total per country of both nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Then we have some generic fertilizer recommendations, because what we do is that we take this total fertilizer input per country and we divide that over all the 185 crops, but we are not just allocating it based on the area. We are weighting that based on fertilizer recommendations. And finally, when we know all the inputs of fertilizers and nutrients, and we know the characteristics of the plants, then we can apply IPCC models to calculate emissions of nitrous oxide, ammonia, nitrate, NOx, and CO2 and nitrous oxide from organic soils. So one example here is that we are, you see an example of what are the data inputs and outputs for, in this case here, Indonesian cultivation of oil palm fruit. And in this way, just by combining these three data sources and an emission model, we can set up these kind of LCA processes here for 3,500 data sets in one go. That's efficient. Another thing about these production functions, we have not only done it for crops, we have done the same for animals, and we have also done it for the production of fertilizers. So what you see here in the right side of the screen is a production function of fertilizers. So you see you have ammonium nitrate, which is the most common nitrogen fertilizer, at least in Europe. This one has input of nitric acid when you produce that. And again, then you see nitric acid, it has input of ammonia. And when you are producing ammonia, it has input of hydrogen. And when you are producing hydrogen, you have other inputs. So we have really made a linked parameterized model of fertilizer production here. And this generic standard model you see here has then been embedded in this multi-regional background database. So we have taken the chemical industry, in this case here, India, and then we have linked that together with hydrogen, ammonia, and nitric acid production in India to further detail that. And in a similar way, we are embedding the ammonium nitrate in the fertilizer industry in India. And we do the same for all 48 countries in the Exio-based database. So by doing that, we're having very detailed and accurate data on fertilizer production. We are using different data sources when we are, you see the different modules of the big climate database here. So we have crops and animals. Here we are using models of IPCC to emissions, and we are setting up nitrogen balances. The data we are using is from Faostat, IFAStat, IPCC, etc. For food manufacturing, retail, and packaging, here we are not really using any models as such, but we are using recipe data from literature and also some own measurements. We're having this land use change or indirect land use change model, which is based on a reference cited here in the bottom. And that draws upon data from Faostat, IFAStat, and IPCC. Again, we have the fertilizer module, which is based largely on chemical reactions and various data. And trade data, I have mentioned that we are having these trade data. So when we are buying grain crops in the Danish market for grain crops, take into account that we are buying grains from different countries. Here we are using trade data from Faostat and another trade database called Baki. So it's the world trade databases we are making use of. Okay, then I want to say a few words about results. First of all, there are simply too many results to present all of them to you in one go. So you can access the results at the website referred to here. You can also follow the barcode. But what you will see when you go into these results, you will see that the results, they are transparent and you have a full documentation of how everything is put together. So in principle, what you could do was to go and look at all the data, and in principle, you could reproduce everything and get the same results as we do. If you're just looking at the results over here, then you see that I think there are actually 500 bars. It is representing footprints in kilogram of CO2 equivalents per kilogram of food in Denmark. You see that there are some products which are leading to very high footprints. I think we don't have all the products here. There are some that are going even higher, some beef products. But you see that there are some products which are really having a high impact, whereas there are some other products which are having lower impacts. So there's a huge variation, basically going from almost zero and then way up to more than 100 kilogram of CO2 per kilogram of food. So imagine that you go to this website here. It looks like this here. If you then want to dig further into one of the products, then you can click on the products. What you see here, that's links. First of all, there are some very nice search facilities. So it should be relatively easy to find the product you are interested in. You can search by category, country, or there's a free text search field here. You can also click on the headers here, so you can sort them alphabetically or by size of numbers in different stages here. But once you have entered one of these specific products, now I think I've clicked on Iberian dry cured ham slices in Spain. Then you have a picture. It looks like this here, and it tells you that these data here, they refer to 1 ton of this nice ham in Spain. It has a contribution. It means that it has an impact of 36 tons of CO2. So 36 kilogram of CO2 per kilogram of ham. And then it shows this 36 here. How is that composed? So you see these contributions down here. The first column here, it tells you what is the recipe. And since we are at the supermarket now, you can see that here you have the actual product. Next one, there you have the packaging. So the flow amount is 1 ton of product. Then you have packaging of 1 ton. Next one is transport. It's measured in ton kilometer. So it has been transported 200 kilometer, this one here. And then we have a retail service referring to 1 ton of ambient storage in Spain here. So that's the recipe of the product you are buying. Over here, you can see how much CO2 does that contribute to. And if you sum the numbers you see here, you are getting the total contribution you saw in the top up here. And finally, you can see what is the intensity of each of the products. So you can see, the first row here, that's the same. That's the production of the, that's when these Spanish ham, they are leaving the slaughterhouse. It has this footprint here. The next one, it shows 1 ton, packaging of 1 ton, you have this intensity here. The next one is intensity per ton kilometer. So 1 ton kilometer emits this amount of CO2, etc. Then what you can do is, imagine you could click on this one here if you want to know more about how is Iberian dry cured ham produced, and then you have the production recipe of that down here. So you have all the inputs and outputs of the slaughterhouse. And again, you could click on this pork here, and you can see how is pig meat in Spain produced. And further, you could click on pig meat, how that is actually produced. And then you have the market for pig meat in Spain. And you could actually go on clicking on any of these items you see here to have further detailed results. So you can keep on clicking and see the recipes of the new products. So that should demonstrate that it is a very transparent way of presenting data. Maybe I should also mention that on the web page referred to here you see that's just a screen dump of what the web page looked like. Then in the upper right corner, there's something called documentation, and there you can download the most recent documentation report, which describes in detail all the data sources and how every calculation has been made. Okay, now I just want to say a few words about the future directions of our work. First of all, as Michael has already mentioned, is that we would like to add more countries, more food products, and more impact. We also would like to make the web page even better. Currently, the web page is set up so you can only search for these 540 different products. But as I showed earlier, there are thousands of different data sets. So we would like to expand the user interface so you can also search for any product that is behind the scene. So you could search crude palm oil from a palm oil mill in Malaysia, or you could search for soybean cultivation in Brazil. All these data are there. Currently, you have to click to find them, but we would like to make it searchable. All these new things up here, our current idea is that we would like to set up a crowdfunded project so that interested parties, they can contribute, and when we exceed a threshold, then we can add products or countries or more impacts, etc. If you are interested in knowing more, or you want to be put on a list who is alerted when something new happens, you can send an email to this email address here. You can also keep an eye on this web page here, is where we are posting our different crowdfunded projects. One thing that will also happen is that before, when you saw this picture here, you saw that there was a database called Exiobase that was used as a background database for the production of electricity, fuels, chemicals. I mean, for the emissions related to the production of all these inputs here. This Exiobase database will be replaced by a new database called Bonsai. And that change is going to happen either in second half of 25 or first half of 26. So why does it have to take so long time before we do that? That's because I need to say a few words about Bonsai. Bonsai is a new LCA database. It's the next generation of LCA database. And this database will be the one to take over after Exiobase. The database, it is largely based on experiences from the EcoInvent database and Exiobase database, but everything is built from scratch. The work of the construction of this database is funded by the Danish KR Foundation by 5.5 million euros. So we have on average been 10 to 15 people working full time in 4.5 years to complete this database. And it will be finalized by June 25. So in 7 months, this database will be released. If you think that is interesting, there's already a beta version available here. I think I forgot to mention that everything on this Bonsai database will be open access and open source. There's no need to register or anything. You can just enter the page and you can harvest the data you would like to harvest and get. So just to say a few concluding remarks is that we now have a database, a food database with broadly representative data at retail in 5 countries. It's a very user-friendly search menu. It's intuitive, transparent, etc. The model is very flexible, so we can add new products, new countries, etc. And in the future, it will be integrated with this Bonsai database, which is an even bigger database, which covers everything, not only food, but it will cover all products, just from televisions to cars to container transport to banking services. So with this, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and I hope that you have some questions and we can have a fruitful discussion from now on.
Thank you, Yannick. That was perfect. And now we have some 15 minutes for questions, and you're welcome to write questions or comments in the chat, but you can also raise your hand in the program, and then we will give you the words. So, and maybe Yannick, you should stop sharing like this. All right. Anyone up for questions or comments? Should we start with the chat maybe? Let's see. Okay, Jonathan, go ahead. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. I had two questions. The first one, I was wondering if it's possible to view the emissions intensities in an Excel file, because it would be a lot easier to work with. And my second question is there a way of having like a simple form of the database? For example, you presented the slide at the start, which showed a cow was 74 kilograms per seal or something, whatever. But when I look at the database, there's like 6 or 8 different beef products, and it's quite difficult for me to create a table comparing beef, chicken, and pork just by looking at the database on the internet. I'm wondering if there's a way to simplify that.
Right. Yes, there's on the 540 products, we have an Excel sheet on the Danish database, or den store klimadatabases.dk, and that Excel sheet includes all 5 countries and all 540 products, and divided in total emissions per product and these 5 phases. So that's what we have for download currently. But if you want to go dive into the background data and so on, you need to go to the big climatedatabase.com now and navigate around in that there.
I have noted down that you had a wish to have access for all the data in an Excel sheet. We already have that. We use that when identifying outliers, etc. So I think that's something we can. We will just put that on the web page so it can be downloaded from there.
Thank you.
Right. And anyone else, just raise your hand if you have further questions. Otherwise, we will. Maria asked if we will consider making the results available per nutritional value. I know that you have thoughts on that, Yannick. We actually did it in a blog from CONCITO on the Danish results, but there's Yannick, you have some arguments against doing this, if you like to share them.
Yes. Well, the database we are providing here is meant to provide the basis for comparisons. And of course, you're right that one way of comparing 2 different food items would be per calorie energy content of food item. It could also be based on proteins or based on water content, or could be based on carbohydrates, or it could be based on many different things. So you cannot say that there's one unit of comparison that is globally applicable. I would say if I'm going to have some joy, I could compare. It could be a Mars bar with a cup of coffee. For me, if I have a break, these two products, they are substitutable. And there's a huge difference on the nutrient content of a cup of coffee and a chocolate bar. But in this situation, it would actually just be one small serving that would be the basis of comparison. So the comparison based on nutrition is relevant in some cases, but other cases it's not relevant. And we don't want to force people comparing based on just one predefined basis of comparison.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned it, Yannick, but also it's, yeah, the nutritional aspects, it's not about getting as much as possible of proteins and so on. It's about getting sufficient protein, and that's also what could be misleading in integrating that in the database as such. But of course, as CONCITO has done, it can be relevant in some context to communicate and compare where you get most nutrition for the climate footprint, so to say. We also have a question from Janne about the methodology, saying
maybe
that most other...
Maybe just one thing to add. In the Danish webpage, where there is a download option of the Excel version, in this Excel version, there is actually nutritional data on the 500 food items. So it would be very easy for everyone to do the comparison based on nutritional content.
Yes, and the nutritional content there is from the Danish Technological University, and there are a free database on nutritional contents of foods, and they have a database of, I think it's several thousand food products, nutritional contents. So it can be done. The question from Janne was about the methodologies and mentioning that most other databases use an attributional approach, and as a result, impact for foods from the big climate database are often different to compare with other sources. What's our thoughts about this? Will you start, Yannick?
Yes, I can easily start on that. I would actually go back to something of the first things I said, that we think the most important information is to provide for each food item is how, if I buy this product, how much additional CO2 would you expect to be in the atmosphere? So that's what we have very systematically followed, this cause-effect relationship. So you buy a product, how much additional CO2 is in the atmosphere from this product? I argue that most of the questions or most purposes of footprint information, the purpose is actually consequential. I don't know why the most commonly applied method is attributional, because most questions are consequential, but often the consequential questions are answered with an attributional model. I can give one very easy example where things are really becoming a bit odd. So imagine that I want to buy some palm oil. And if I'm doing that with an attributional model, then I would include some land use changes that would focus on how much, I'm growing my oil palm fruit on a certain plot. And then in the attribution model, I would have to go 20 years back or 25 years back in time and see what was on this land plot 25 or 20 years ago. If there was a forest, then I would have to take into account the change of this forest to oil palm plantation. And that would be allocated to my palm oil. So what is wrong with this approach is that if I'm buying a bottle of palm oil today, then I have no chance of affecting deforestation 20 years ago. It's simply completely impossible. Therefore, what we have done instead is that if I'm buying palm oil today, then I put some additional pressure on agricultural land, and I'll be contributing to some additional deforestation somewhere. So that's an example of how the logic of attributional modeling may lead to some weird things now and then.
Yes. All right, we have some more questions to answer. There was one asking if the database are compatible with LCA software like Gabi. I don't know the software.
Yes, it is definitely compatible with CIMA Pro. We have tried to import lifecycle inventories in Gabi, but the interface of getting data in, getting large data in, is a bit hard to work with. So we have not really succeeded with that yet. But if someone they would like to help us doing that, please feel free to reach out.
All right, and August is asking or commenting that the intensity definition was a bit unclear. Can you explain that again? And then also how we will work to make the database easy to access for Danish consumers. I can answer the last question. It's available on the websites here, and we see our task as providing the data and basic information, and we would love to see other actors taking it further with apps and climate labeling schemes and what else. But from CONCITO side, and I guess also you, Yannick, we will focus on providing the data and the basic information around it, and invite all other actors to use it, and also make additional tools to access it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the intensity question, Yannick.
Yes. Now I was just I'm trying to share my screen. Can you please confirm you can see it?
Yes.
Okay. I just clicked on growing of chilies and peppers in China. So what you see here is that 1 ton of chilies has an emission of 0.62 tons of CO2 equivalents. Well, then when we have what you see in the first column here, flow amount, that's the production recipe of chilies in China. The next one is how do the different contributions add up to this total we see here. Then the last column, the intensity, this one here, it shows you have 9.70 here. It tells you that you have 9.70 tons of CO2 per ton of nitrogen fertilizer in the Chinese market. The next one here is 1.6 ton of CO2 per hectare year land that is used in this chili cultivation. So this intensity here, it shows what is the impact per unit of the different inputs you have here. It can also be said that the number you see here, that's this number, the CO2 emissions divided by the amount. That's another way to explain it.
Time is up, and we can take the last question here. How does the tool compare to other data sets like Agripolis, Bur and Nemesic? I'm suspecting some users getting confused with the difference in data. That's a question from Manuel. Yeah, from my side, I would say that the general figures are very similar when you compare food types like beef versus vegetables and so on. But there can, of course, be significant differences in the different product groups. So how should we consider that? Any thoughts on that, Yannick? Before we start?
I'd say if we are looking in other databases, we could compare to Agribalus as one example. Agribalus is one of the few databases which are actually open and also quite transparent. So that's actually on the good side of Agribalus. But where this database here is different from Agribalus is that the database you see here is global. So it contains crop cultivation of all crops in all countries in the world behind. Same for animal production. So it has a more global scope, the database you see here. Furthermore, the database you see here, it also includes the production of services. So if you have a chili grower in China, if this chili grower is taking a loan in a bank in China, you will actually see that you are using some banking services. And you could go to banking services in China and see that banking services in China, they are using PCs and electricities, etc. So it is much more complete in its coverage as well.
All right. Great. Thanks everyone for the interest in this project and the webinar. And we will share more information on CONCITO's website and 2.0 CA Consultants website in the future. And keep an eye out for it. And we hope you have good experiences with the tools out there. So thanks for now, and have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.